Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ahead at the Apex, a special edition podcast. Tim, are you excited for a special edition podcast?
I'm very excited for a special edition podcast.
Good. What is the special edition for which this podcast is being made?
Well, we wanted to speak on, or in a little more depth, about one of the most impressive and valuable titles in all of motorsport generally, which is known as the Triple Crown. This is winning the Monaco Grand Prix, the Indianapolis 500, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans.
Yes, despite what the internet will have you believe, it is not a Formula One World Championship, a World Endurance World Championship, and an IndyCar World Championship, or IndyCar Championship. They don't race around the world. It is not that. It is indeed, as Tim just described, Monaco GP win, Indianapolis 500, and the 24 Hours of Le Mans. The big three, really.
And we have the first of them this year coming up this weekend in Monaco.
Yeah, well, actually, I mean, we have
both Indy as well.
Yeah, IndyCar usually follows the Monaco Grand Prix, so that's Sunday as a complete write-off.
Yes.
Because it's also the British Grand Prix in MotoGP, which we'll discuss next week in our episode 5 regular scheduled programming. But yes, big weekend for motorsport, and Le Mans is obviously next month, so not actually that far away. So yes, this is this one will be Monaco.
Yes.
And then we decided we would discuss Indy after the fact, so we actually have something to comment on. And then we will discuss Le Mans before Le Mans, I think. Should
yes.
we do a hype up? Because technically it's part of WEC, so it will be covered in our episode, who knows, 11.
Something like that. Yeah, I think we, in discussing it, the two of us off air, we were keen to provide more of a context because especially to a lot of newer fans of F1, which we've seen in the last few years come in, also the fact that we want to be multidisciplinary, Indy's not really spoken about massively in the UK, and everyone knows of Le Mans. I think the films that have come out about it, Ford v Ferrari being the most notable, gave it a bit of profile, but in terms of the history and what makes that race or these races so important has not really been discussed in a closed session. So that's what we wanted to do, provide more of an overview and either hype it up or discuss it after the fact, as we will do with Indy. So excited to try something new.
Yep, absolutely. And even though it seems very strange, because as of time of recording, episode 4 only went out last night. That was on me. That was a mistake that I made by not transferring the recording properly.
Honestly, you can't get the staff these days.
And it's nice to have Tim back in the studio, of course. And, it will be... I realised that in that podcast, in listening back whilst uploading it, that actually we talk about Imola being next weekend and it's not. It's already been. So I appreciate that timeline-wise, this might be quite...
It's going to be crazy to get your head
because
around.
you're going to have 3 Ahead at the Apex podcasts in the space of about a week as we're recording.
That sounds like heaven on earth, not
as we're recording episode 5 next week, where we will discuss the Monaco Grand Prix and Imola, even though it's already happened. But yes.
Yeah.
Lots to discuss. I also saw this morning that McLaren released a new livery for the last 2 races in this triple header. I don't know why they didn't run it last week.
They hadn't got it ready. The graphic design intern was slow on his deadline.
But it's way more orange than the previous one, so they must be expecting big performance gains because they dropped the orange to save weight, and now here we are, and they're adding more back.
More orange.
So they're clearly expecting to absolutely annihilate these last 2 races in the triple header. The Riviera triple header, as they're calling it.
I like that name.
Yeah, but Imola's not really on the Riviera. Anyway, maybe that's why they didn't run it. Maybe that is why they didn't run it. Who knows?
So, how historical is the Monaco Grand Prix? Well, it has been a staple of the calendar since 1955. Never missed a year. But it did feature in the inaugural season in 1950.
Yep.
But go back a few decades earlier, it had been raced at since 1929.
Yes,
so
by Anthony Nodes, hence the corner name, and his group of Monaco racing enthusiasts.
Hooligans, I think we call them.
Yeah, I believe they would call them street racers now.
Yes.
But yes, it's been used since then and actually not changed all that much. So it's the last corner, which is named after the famous racer, the crew, Anthony Node's corner. And back then, the last corner was just a hairpin. There was no La Rascasse. There was no swimming pool complex in the way. There was not, that whole section was just basically a straight line into a hairpin. But basically unchanged since 1955. They've really just moved some barriers out of the way. Mainly in that swimming pool complex, actually. You must have seen some videos of Senna driving around there and all of a sudden there's just a wall right in front of him. Well, it turns out you can make a track like that safer if you take the wall away. Who'd have thought?
Yeah, funny.
Crazy.
And that all of the changes that have been made really were almost entirely driven by a need for greater safety. It is a ludicrous place to drive.
Yeah, if somebody brought it to you now and said, right, okay, this is motorsport that exists called Formula One. The cars are 5 meters long and 2 meters wide. They can travel at 300 kph, no problem. And they often launch themselves through the sky whenever they collide with each other. Shall we put them on a 2.5 meter wide street through the south of France? You'd be laughed out of the room.
Yeah, there's no way.
But because it comes from a time when the cars were less than a meter in footprint and basically little toy cars racing around the streets, it's just stayed. And now it's just become, well, really more of a demonstration run, I think it's fair to say.
And we'll discuss that a bit more later on in terms of where it sits and its place now. But interestingly, there are a few more changes. There used to be these really high curbs, very aggressive.
Yeah.
Which again, you collide even in your little toy racer.
Yeah, with one of those, and man,
you're gone. And as you said,
have you seen in the originals? They used to run with, so you know the bit that comes around towards the swimming pool, around the harbour, essentially.
Yeah.
So in everyday life, that is a little car park, and they have little shops on there and bodegas and stuff, right? Under normal circumstances, there are these huge bollards there to stop you from just driving across the pavement. And they
recreating the corner.
They used to run with those just as plant pots on the side and bollards and concrete bollards and all sorts. And now you look at that and you go, wow, how was that ever allowed?
That's scary. Have you seen? There are some videos which, if you haven't seen, go look them up on YouTube or something, of people driving the Monaco track in the normal Monaco setup. So it's not been prepped for the race. Yeah. That someone's just got into a sim world and drives around it.
Yeah.
It's wild.
It took me ages to realize the last corner before the tunnel, those two corners actually jump over a roundabout. And to get there, they have to take out streetlights and other bits and pieces that have been put in since, right? Because you're not telling me back in 1950 that there was roundabouts and streetlights. It would have been probably just a T-junction or something. And that's why it's kept there. But then since then, because there's another tunnel where there's usually a gantry between those two corners, right? That gantry is the path that leads to the next tunnel that's slightly above on that mountainside that goes up to the hotels that they show on the camera whenever they're leaving the tunnel. It goes up to those. Try and follow the Monaco Grand Prix circuit just on regular Street View.
It's hilarious.
It's hilarious because there's bike parks and bodega streets and swimming pools and all sorts. It's not. You look at it and you go, "How is that a track?"
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, speaking of bicycles, the track was famously described by Mr. Nelson Piquet as like riding a bike around your living room.
Yeah, which I think is the most accurate description.
Perfect. Poetry in action.
He's not said some other great things, but that is brilliant.
But I think it highlights fundamentally what the track is, which is the ultimate driver's track.
Absolutely. It doesn't matter if your car is, a W11 Mercedes or if it's the Haas or just thinking modern era, but even going back further, we've had Ligier's win, we've had McLaren versus Williams, we've had Ferraris that weren't in good nick winning the race. Things like, it's not about is your car the best. It's about can your car allow you to shine to be the best. So yes, I'm not expecting Gabriel Bortoleto to win this weekend, but I'm not saying that he couldn't.
Yeah, it's probably the best chance he'll have.
Yeah, absolutely. Year. If he nails qualifying on Saturday, you best believe he might be in with a shot of winning that race.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, we have a few big names that will forever be etched within Monaco. And the first of whom is probably the most famous Triple Crown holder.
The only Triple Crown holder.
One and the same. Graham Hill.
Graham Hill.
Who in his time was known as Mr. Monaco. And he won the race 5 times. Only surpassed by one.
Ayrton Senna with 6.
Who won his first 5 back-to-back.
He did. Famously, as we'll discuss in a minute, beating Nigel Mansell to that victory. Yes, Ayrton and Monaco are synonymous to I'm sure many Formula One fans, because being the ultimate driver's track, many consider him the ultimate driver, and therefore it makes perfect sense that he would have won the most Monaco Grand Prix in a relatively short career time.
Oh, yeah.
If we're being honest. I mean, Lewis has only won 3. Fernando has only won 2. And they're at the top of the races entered list, and therefore probably seasons entered list. Lewis in particular has been in every season since 2007. So yes, very impressive, both of them. And as I said, Graham Hill, the only Triple Crown holder, having won all 3 events that we're going to discuss.
And I think, as you say, Monaco and Senna are synonymous and forever will be, but also the Marlborough McLaren
absolutely
is the iconic image, and they are the most successful team there, not just with Senna, but of course Prost had his time and other fantastic drivers through some phenomenal victories. They sit there with 15. So Senna holds just over a third of McLaren's total victories,
which is staggering, really.
Yes.
So Senna has a third or over a third of McLaren's victories in Monaco. Graham Hill and Schumacher both tied for 5, not back-to-back for Schumacher. In fact, quite evenly spaced, 94, 5, 7, 9, and 2001. So very, very even for Michael. Alain Prost with 4. Sterling Moss, Jackie Stewart, Nico Rosberg, and Lewis Hamilton with 3 apiece. Lewis hasn't won in Monaco since 2019, which is quite telling. Juan Manuel Fangio, who won the very first Monaco Grand Prix, he has 2, along with some other famous names. So Niki Lauda, Jody Scheckter, David Coulthard, Fernando Alonso, Mark Webber, Sebastian Vettel, and Max Verstappen, who hasn't won since 2023, but is our most recent winner on that list. That's for sure. 2024, of course, being won by Charles Leclerc.
Yes.
Come on, I expected you to know that one. That was
Jumping in the harbour.
Yes, Jumping in the Harbour.
With the iconic commentary.
Being the first Monegasque to win in Monaco is very impressive. I don't know why I put a weird emphasis on Monaco, but now it's staying in there, and I've continued to speak, so I won't be able to edit this out at all whatsoever. So that's good of me. So even just to go back in the list, so yes, it has typically been won by not necessarily the best, the most dominant driver in a team, but it has typically been won by the team that is the better car that year, going back as far as, 1996. Olivier Panis in the Ligier, and even going as far back as maybe Brabham, Williams, Ford in 1983 with Keke Rosberg. So it doesn't need to be the best car, but it helps. I think
It
the point
always helps.
the point we're trying to make is it helps to have a well-balanced car to allow the driver to shine.
Yes, definitely. Well, one or two more facts for you.
Hit me.
Monaco is the only track on the calendar that does not adhere to the 305-kilometer race distance.
Yes. So around the numbers on this one. To get to the 305-kilometer race distance, Monaco would need to run 92 laps. It runs 78, so doesn't sound that many, right? 14 more laps. How hard can it be? But to do that, based on the race lap record time of Lewis Hamilton in 2020, I think, of about a 1:14, to get there, it would have a run time of 1 hour and 54 minutes under perfect green flag racing, which typically...
Which is rare.
It doesn't happen at Monaco because the barriers are literally, you could reach out of the car either side and touch them. So typically doesn't happen, which would mean we would always hit the time limit of 2 hours, and it's unlikely that the FIA would grant special permission for that, given that they have to pay the TV broadcasters for a certain amount of money and et cetera, and they don't like doing that.
No. So we're what, 270 kilometers? Roughly? I think it's 260, yeah.
260, which, is not that far off the 305.
No.
And certainly Monaco always feels like one of the longest races of the calendar anyway.
Because the weather's always crap, so it's delayed by a few hours, and then someone puts it in the wall, and then they finally get going again, and someone else puts it in the wall.
Yeah. And it's not always about running at the fastest speed, because quite often you want the pack to be bunched up so that you don't have people trying an undercut or anything like that. I mean, Daniel Ricciardo's victory there, which we'll talk about soon, speaks to that truth. It's not a race where you want to be pushing the limits of friction and speed and trying to get it done in the fastest possible time. So it typically does run into, are we going to hit the lap counter here before we hit the timer? And but I'd like to see them run the full 305. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah, I think they do, or they do so many showcase events. I remember the historical Grand Prix, or I think it's called the historical Grand Prix. When they get all the old cars back.
Monaco sets up like 3 months ahead of Formula One arriving, and they do the historical Grand Prix of Monaco, which is usually just a bunch of rich people in second-hand F1 cars they've bought. I mean, Charles Leclerc did a run in Niki Lauda's Ferrari
and threw it
2 years ago and threw it into a wall. Then they do Formula E, turn up usually about 2 weeks before Monaco. So they start building Monaco roughly in, or what are we now, May, so February, end of February time. Mid-March, early April, they do the historical run. Then they do Formula E, which I think was 3 weeks ago, something like that. They keep everything there roughly for when Formula One arrived, then they do Formula One, and then I don't think there's anything else. I think then they just take it down. But they try and get in Formula 2, 3 Academy. Do they turn up this weekend?
I think Academy are there.
I think so. I
think everything's there.
Which would be a fairly busy calendar then, schedule for this weekend. And then it just all packs down, and it takes another couple of months to take it all down. It's always easier taking stuff down than it is putting it up. But to think, if you live in Monaco, racing has to be a keen interest of yours, because otherwise
it's annoying. Very in the
way all the time for about 5 months of the year.
Yeah. And the only other thing, which I'd like to say, one of my favorite parts about Monaco actually, is the podium does not exist as a normal podium. They all go up into the royal box and meet with the prince, who's always there. Obviously a very keen race enthusiast himself.
Yep.
The scenes of him and Charles last year were
beautiful,
so lovely.
Yep.
And it just is another one of those things where, in a time within F1 where the influence of American money and Middle Eastern money is becoming more and more prevalent, having these little traditions really makes you feel grounded in that, okay, this was a sport that grew out of some keen racers who were just a bit nuts and inspired everyone from all classes.
Yeah, so I think,
and is super accessible.
We could talk for hours about how Formula One started, but essentially it was a couple of pilots and things who were just keen for adrenaline, racing around Silverstone in whatever they could pull together. Much as this started by a couple of, as you say, hooligans who like to race on the streets of Monaco in whatever they could find. And it is, while many diehard Formula One fans will say the Monaco Grand Prix shouldn't be on the calendar anymore, we've outgrown it and it's boring and whatever else they may say, if we let this one go, we're forgetting a huge amount of history.
Oh, massively. And
I don't think it has to conform to the norms of Formula One for it to stay on the Formula One calendar, much as we're going to talk about, Le Mans doesn't conform to the norms of the World Endurance Championship anymore, right? It's one of the only 24-hour races on that calendar, if not the only one. It involves categories that don't exist in the World Endurance Championship and so on. And the same with IndyCar, right? You don't have to field your IndyCar Championship drivers in the Indy 500. You know, there are teams who turn up with extra wildcards and anybody, in principle, anybody can enter a car into qualifying and make it to the grid of in the Indy 500, but you don't get that at the Indianapolis Grand Prix of Detroit, right? So just because it doesn't fit with the narrative of this, as you say, you know, more races in the Middle East, more races in the US, big circuits, big cars, doesn't mean it doesn't have a place.
No, absolutely not. But before, I fear we're getting a bit too modern.
We're barreling towards the modern era.
Exactly.
Quickly, yes.
I think it's important to take a step back and reflect on some of the iconic moments, as we already have briefly discussed, but in greater detail. I think there are so many.
Yes.
For a start. There are some big ones where, especially in qualifying, caused quite a bit of controversy. So Schumacher had his moment in 2006, which stopped Alonso from pole at the time.
I think my favorite memory about that one is every year Formula One release their 10 biggest moments at Monaco. And every year they show this clip of Schumacher forgetting to turn the wheel into the Rascasse and gently bumping into the barrier, whether it was on purpose or not. The stewards deemed it was. And they always show the clip of Keke Rosberg coming out of the Williams garage. His son was in Williams at the time. And going, it really speaks to a test of his character, who this was. And one year, they backed that clip onto the clip of Nico Rosberg doing almost exactly the same thing. And the thing that makes me laugh is just the sweet irony of whoever made that video knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah,
it was perfect.
Yeah. And of course, even more recently than that, we had the Perez-Max incident into the tunnel.
It's not an uncommon thing to see somebody try and deny, whether it's on purpose or not. Quite a lot of the time we see pole denied because of a yellow flag incident at Monaco, because it has to be immediate and the marshals there are on steroids or something.
They're so good.
They're so quick at getting the yellow flags out and letting everybody know what's going on. There's a dedicated team, of course, to the Monaco Grand Prix circuit. And we've seen it a lot. You're right. Perez and Max, most recently, I guess you could also argue Charles Leclerc when he put it on pole.
When he did his own.
Had his own little incident into the swimming pool. That definitely wasn't on purpose. I mean, why would he intentionally DNF himself for the race on Sunday? But it did deny Max and anybody else a chance to get pole. Rosberg and Hamilton in 2014, obviously at even their first year, the tensions were very high about who was going to be the dominant force in that dominant Mercedes. And yeah, Schumacher and Alonso is one that is etched into my mind forever, that I cannot unsee.
You can't escape it.
You can't escape it, and it comes around every year, and it's it's a fond childhood memory, I suppose.
I think one of the craziest memories or events at the Grand Prix, I was not there, but I know a lot about it. It was the 84 race.
Yeah, don't look at me like that. I wasn't there either. Okay.
Sure. Sure. But this, I think, was just looking at the starting grid alone, the names are everyone. Almost everyone is there.
Yeah.
All of the iconic names that we would associate with the sport and legends of the sport were all sat on that grid. And terrible conditions, as is almost customary every few years in Monaco, just the worst rain Europe has ever seen.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, this race is a bit boring. What do we need? I don't know. Black
Storm.
skies and horrendous storms. That'll do it. Yeah, great. Let's do it.
Yeah, and so many of these big names, Mansell, Lauda, all span off.
Mm-hmm.
Incredibly difficult conditions. And a young Ayrton Senna, for the first time, really demonstrates his absolute dominance, not just in Monaco, but of the car, of driving, of his inherent natural ability, and just almost dominated from a rather poor qualifying position. I think he qualified in 13th, and slowly just carves his way to the front. But in a rather controversial ending, Prost, who at this point is being caught by Senna at roughly 4 seconds a lap, eventually signals to the marshals, okay, we need to stop this race. We need to, it's too dangerous, as he sees a rabid Ayrton Senna behind him foaming at the mouth. And they do. So the stewards call the race off. In normal fashion, they're awarded half points because the full race distance was not completed. And Senna had to settle for second, having had this brilliant drive and was looking to be the dominant force within the race. That day, there were only 8 finishers. And Prost ends up losing that championship by half a point.
Yeah, so if I'm not mistaken, this was Alain Prost's second real season in Formula One, having got the call up earlier than Senna. Those two being rivals throughout the junior career. This was Senna's rookie season in Formula One, driving for Toleman. Prost was already at McLaren at the time. And obviously it didn't really take long for Senna to make it to bigger teams, and some might say that this was a demonstration of why he deserved to be he ended up at Lotus and then eventually at McLaren. Exceptional drive. And whether you believe Prost had the FIA in his pocket or not, and his friend Jackie Ickx, who was stewarding that race at the time, was in his pocket or not, you can't deny he shot himself in the foot a little bit.
And again, assuming the rest of the results in the season remain the same.
Yeah. If he just made it a little bit longer. Even
if he settled for second, having lost that race to Senna, he would have won the championship to Lauda.
Yeah, absolutely, because Lauda was already out.
Exactly. And Lauda didn't score that race, hence his 72 to 71 and a half.
Yeah,
he didn't have the half
assuming
point.
Prost gets on to, I don't know, second or third, he beats Lauda in the championship that year.
And you assume Prost would have held second, having had Senna overtake him.
Absolutely.
So just the most dramatic. I think this was evidence of the gossip and
yeah, this started to ring alarm bells for Senna for sure. I mean, I don't know him personally,
that's
but
a shame.
I've seen a lot of footage and documentary stuff that's, Senna was convinced Prost had the FIA on his side, and whether it was because he was French and so the FIA, or whether it was because he was just more of a likable character, who knows? But this was definitely an example of times when Prost maybe said something or complained about something or suggested something to the FIA and it came through and it happened.
Yeah, and this idea of social politics and sport politics was, always there, obviously, but the first time it was really clear, or the first time it was, or seemed clear
to
your average viewer was not involved within the team. So a huge incident, and as I said, in many ways, a precursor for a lot of the sport's modern draws in being quite exciting and gossipy at times. I think it in a way goes back to that.
Yeah. I promise not every race that we're going to talk about is a wet Monaco, but the next one is also a wet Monaco, because while 8 finishes in 1984 doesn't sound like a lot, Monaco had 3 finishes in 1996, 7 classified because they DNF'd within, I think it's something like 3 or 4 laps from the end of the race, and you still qualify as being a classified finisher. Somebody will correct me, and I hope they do, because I really don't understand how some people can be classified and some people can't. If you don't cross the finish line, aren't you not classified? But the reason the 1996 Grand Prix is so famous is because it marks this really sort of hero moment for Olivier Panis, a French driver driving for a French team, Ligier, who went from 14th to win the race in the rain. The team didn't really know how to deal with the wet conditions and the switch to dry, because the track does eventually dry out when it stops raining. Crazy. So they just followed Damon Hill, who was in a Williams team, and at the time they were a dominant force. So why would you not follow Damon Hill? Switched to the dry tyres, and that promoted Panis to 3rd. He was behind Hill and Alesi, both of whom suffered mechanical issues. So Hill's Williams engine blew up and Alesi's suspension collapsed. That promoted him to the lead. And you would think, okay, now I can just bring it home, no mistakes. It's really hard to overtake. But because Ligier had no idea how to win a race, really, they hadn't put in enough fuel in Panis' car to finish the race at his last stop. So they were faced with a dilemma of, we either glory run this and hope for the best, or we pit him and he finishes 2nd and we fumble perhaps our best opportunity.
Yeah.
So what they did was they just asked him to do essentially lifting and coasting, as we hear it now, to just try and save fuel, because they knew the tyres would last. But I think the prediction was he would finish 2 laps from the end of the race with no fuel, which which is just unbelievable that you could be so close and yet so far from a Monaco Grand Prix victory. But yeah, I mean, as we said earlier, that really marked the last time not the best team won at Monaco, and was really a sort of 0 to hero kind of story.
Yeah. But this kind of slowed to the flag finish is not unique to just that incident.
Sometimes it's the best option.
Sometimes it is. But famously, a fan favorite Aussie, Mr. Daniel Ricciardo, coming into this race in 2018, wanting redemption for the 2016 event where there was a tyre communication error within the pit stop.
They went from wet to inters to dries in that race. They used the full suite of tyres. And when the teams came into pit for dry tyres, there was some people on the ultra soft, the super soft, the soft, the medium, and the hard. The full suite of the Pirelli range was used in 2016, and Daniel came in, no dry tyres for him, and he just sat there as Lewis overtook him.
Yeah. So a tough event, but he was determined to recover from that and try and improve. And this is, again, having been so close to it and losing it just at the end through no fault of his own, he was keen to recover. But on lap 28, so roughly 50 from the end, he has a power unit problem and is forced to run the rest of the race with only about 75% power.
Yeah, MGUK fail, which is what we're going down to only next year. Just MGUK. This is what can happen if it fails.
Yeah.
You may win the Monaco Grand Prix.
Maybe that's why they're changing the regulations. But Vettel hunted him down, eventually couldn't get past. So Daniel, despite running 2/3 of the race, near enough, with literally a tractor engine. He managed to win it and recovered this historic injustice from 2 years prior with this pit stop issue, which was very exciting. The race was in of itself boring, excluding this, oh my gosh, is Daniel going to recover? And is he going to do it this time? But nonetheless, that was exciting. There's always something to hold on to.
It doesn't always have to be drama from start to finish. I mean, we talked about the French Grand Prix last week in the Monaco GP, which wasn't, battles every corner, but it was still exciting. And this is very much the same sort of thing. It was always, is Daniel going to finish? He did finish within an hour and 42 minutes, which, slow. But no, it was, Ricardo, Vettel, Hamilton nose to tail for the entire race, and one little mistake from Daniel is all a 4-time world champion needs to get through, followed by Lewis would have been 5-time world champion, 4-time world champion. He would have won his 5th
that year.
Yeah, that's all they would need is one little mistake, and it wasn't easy.
And that threat, I think that threat of that type of fight, not just the DRS overtake or the few corners together, that threat of, okay, in a way, this is in the driver's hands. It's not to do with the fact that their wing opens up, that they're going to lose this place. It's in their hands, which is why Monaco is such a driver's track, as we spoke about earlier, and I'm sure we'll touch on again.
Yeah, very reminiscent of 2016 Abu Dhabi, where Lewis was backing Nico into the pack, and all it would take is a lunge from Vettel, and Nico's championship is gone. Right, very that ominous threat of literally anything could happen at any moment right now, and it would throw a huge spanner in this race. Is in and of itself exciting, and one of the reasons why the Monaco Grand Prix is great. Okay, so one of the biggest battles, I think it's fair to say, maybe even one of the last true battles that we've seen at Monaco, was in 1992, just before Senna made the switch to Williams, as Williams were on the rise again, as McLaren was sort of fading, not fading into insignificance, but no longer this dominant force. You have Nigel Mansell dominating the race for 70 of the 78 laps, just walking it in this unbelievable Williams. And you have Senna in second. And that was until Mansell suffers a loose wheel nut and is forced to pit. Loses control a little bit of the car, realizes this is going to be a safety issue, pits. So now he's got a light car with fresh rubber, comes out in second behind Senna, and he reels him in at almost 2 seconds a lap, and is within that 2 second gap with 3 laps to go, and thus spawns the 3 most exciting laps of the Monaco Grand Prix I think I've ever seen, because it was every single corner Mansell is just scrambling over the back of Senna, and it is an absolute demonstration of what it takes to be a multi-world champion and what it takes to defend, because Senna's tyres were old, his car was not the quickest. Whether you're a good driver or not, old tyres versus new tyres, you can do a lot more with new tyres, right? And I have no idea how Mansell doesn't overtake him, because it is every single corner he's trying. And, this is a time when aero wasn't huge, so you could follow for a long time, and under braking is how you made your overtakes, not just, as you say, DRS passes or whatever. And just a very exciting 3 laps to watch. I mean, it's not, we know the outcome, but
yeah.
But it is just, it's cool to watch these 2 titans of the sport battling for such a long time around a track that people tell you is impossible to follow out or impossible to overtake or anything like that. So yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And I think, again, that's more a comment on the newer cards and the newer regulations, and where F1 and wanted to take the sport moving towards higher aero, and faster cornering rather than necessarily
These
faster top
heroes.
speeds
Yeah.
and things like that. But yeah, as we said in the introduction, Senna is Mr. Monaco.
Yeah, so that marked his 4th in a row, and he would go on to win for McLaren one more time in 1993 before making the switch to Williams and obviously, sadly, never making the 95 Monaco Grand Prix, which was, the 94 Monaco Grand Prix, which was obviously won by Schumacher, who does back-to-back for Benetton.
Let's talk 2025. This year, McLaren come in pretty competitive, or the most competitive team.
Yep.
Max comes in on great form as well. The track and the Grand Prix in previous years, so 2023, 2024, did not see a ton of action. No. So there were actually no overtakes in 2023. 2024, there were a few.
Handful, I think 11 to
a couple.
15, something like that.
But
most of them in the pit lane as well.
Yeah. No, very few on track.
Yeah.
So this strengthened calls for the circuit to be replaced in favor of something else and
something big in the Middle East.
Probably.
Yeah.
And that this weekend just becomes a parade of cars through a historic arena.
Yeah.
Which I think is, you can understand that where that argument comes from, but what makes Monaco special is that it offers such a different challenge to every other weekend on the calendar. In that Saturday at Monaco, arguably one of the best hours
of Formula One
in the calendar.
Yeah,
that is the focus of the weekend.
Yeah,
and there are a lot of fans that won't watch qualifying or free practice and will just tune in for the race.
Yeah.
And if you were to do that, if you were to treat it like any other race weekend and you were to do that this weekend, you are going to be disappointed in comparison to a Silverstone.
Yeah. But you're also missing the point.
Exactly.
Monaco.
But if you tune into a Saturday at Monaco
and forget the Sunday,
you get a better qualifying experience than pretty much any race in the rest of the year.
Yep.
And you see what these drivers can do. It's not about the car. It's not about the teams. It's about the driver. And it's the driver trying to survive. There's almost this brutalistic approach to attacking this race specifically, because you're not competing against your other drivers. You're competing against the walls and the track.
Yeah.
Which is such in my opinion, an exciting prospect and an exciting approach. And it's a shame that I think the calls get louder as more fans come in, but as fewer fans understand what makes this race special and what makes it exciting.
Yeah, so for me, Q1 is survival. And that means not only getting in a good lap early, so you don't fall foul to any other flags or anything like that, but it also means sticking out the session and making sure you're in the right place on the track to get the best out of your car and making sure there's no traffic and making sure that you survive to make it through to Q2. Q2 is another bout of survival. It's all about not taking too much out of the car so that you don't put it in a wall or you don't hamper your chances in Q3. It's about making sure you're out on the right tyre at the right time in the right place. And then Q3 is all hell breaks loose and the drivers are almost unchained from this mindset of preserving the car. And you get some of the best laps you will ever see and some of the best slow-mos you'll ever see of the cars literally brushing these Armco barriers out of the way. I'm reminded of the swimming pool shot every year where they literally, there's a shot of Kimi Räikkönen's front wing where I don't know whether Ferrari did this intentionally or what, some of the little winglets on the outside of the front wing perfectly slotted through the corrugation on the Armco barriers so that he could take that few extra millimeters of space without damaging the front wing. But there's so much at stake as well, in that if you do throw caution to the wind and you do put it in a wall, you might not make the Grand Prix the next day.
No, which, as we said earlier, happened to Leclerc.
Yeah, or you might end up with a grid penalty, and because you've got to change an engine component or brake parc fermé or whatever, and then that's all that good work is undone. So, yeah, if you can only tune into one session this weekend, make it qualifying.
Yeah, 100%.
Because otherwise you're missing the point.
But this being said, the FIA has introduced a few interesting and unique changes
to try and make the racing better.
So we all know about the mandatory one-stop requirement because you have to run 2 different tyre compounds. But this week, we're going to have a mandatory 2-stop race.
You must. Enforced fun must be had.
Yes.
Right?
You will pit.
Get in the pits twice. Yeah.
I had a thought. Could you pit
on the last lap? Yes.
On the last lap and cross the line in the pit lane?
So no, you can't do that. You can't do that since, somebody's going to correct me here. I believe it's 1996 Silverstone. I'm going to have to look that up mid-podcast. That's so unprofessional. It came in.
But that would be an epic finish if you've got one person chasing down and one person slowly trundling through the pit lane at 70.
Oh, do you want to guess how far away I was? This is all staying in because this is gold.
1 year.
2 years. 1998 British Grand Prix, when Michael Schumacher famously won the race from the pit lane after receiving a penalty for overtaking under a yellow flag. Schumacher entered the pits to serve his penalty on the final lap, but crossed the finish line in the pit lane before reaching his pit box, effectively winning the race on a technicality. So you can no longer do that.
Yeah, but okay, but he was serving a penalty.
Yeah.
But if you didn't have a penalty and you went through the pit lane, I guess you could, because you're not
between
stopping
your pit box and the finish line, because most of the finish lines, in fact the one at Monaco, is beyond the final pit box. So you're saying if you pit on the very last corner, you come into the pit lane, you change your tires. Let's say you're a McLaren, so your pit box is the first one.
And as soon as you've got your new tires on, you served your stop, then you cross the line.
I bet you have to complete one racing lap.
Yeah, maybe.
At least.
Maybe there's small print that.
But
that would be awesome.
I'm thinking what most people will do, if you're in, say, bottom 10, most people will pit off the soft tire on lap 1 onto the hard tires, run most of the race on the hard tires and wait for a safety car and then pit.
Probably.
And then you gain that advantage of, right, I have made my 2 pit stops, but I've essentially done a one-stop race here.
Yeah. So it's I think it's an interesting rule. And I think especially when you look at Imola, a lot of the excitement was created by McLaren pitting Oscar early and then having this offset, and then the strategy got a bit spicy because when is he going to make it to the end? Are they going to need to do stops? When are they going to stop everyone else? So you can incept fun through pit stops.
You can, but I also like what Pirelli are doing. So in Imola, they brought in this new tyre, the C6 tyre, which is not been heard of before. I mean, we've not had anything beyond the C5.
It's always in the graphic, but it's never used.
Right. And it's always been this testing tyre that they've run in places like Barcelona and Abu Dhabi, where they do these post-season or pre-season tests. And we've not seen it used in a race. Not, I believe, since 2019, whenever we had the rainbow tyres from pink hypersofts all the way to hyper hard
tires.
We've not seen these tyres for a while. And they ran it in Imola, and of course, nobody ran it in the race, as far as I know, as far as I can remember. But they were running it in qualifying, and you had this weird, interesting thing in Q2 where the Aston Martins were running actually the C5 which was a medium for that weekend, but which is normally the soft, they were able to push the two Ferraris and I guess Kimi Antonelli out of the top 10 in quali because they were able to push on that tyre. So are we going to see the C5 used in qualifying, maybe Q2, to get multiple laps in?
Yeah.
And then we only really see C6 in Q3. But then, of course, they only bring a certain number of C4 and C5 with them. So then we're going to see loads of C6 in the race.
Exactly.
It does add this extra
else.
element. And I don't think two-stop is the answer. I don't think forced two-stop is the answer. We're heading very quickly back to 2012 when we had tyres that would just fall off a cliff at the end of their lifetime. And you would get these 3-4 stop races because the tyres couldn't do more than 15 laps. And as long as we don't get to that point again where tyres are shredding, I think we're going to be in a good way. If we get these organic two-stops, we had one at Bahrain.
Yeah.
Right? So if we get there, I think the forcing the two-stop is the thing that I have an issue with.
Yeah, I don't.
It's good.
I
for
can
Monaco,
understand that. I'm saying, in the context of this race, you can see there's some merit. But if it was something to be applied universally, that would be quite worrying. I think also it's interesting to see how quickly Pirelli have reacted to the likes of George, who at Spa, everyone was saying, we can't overtake, and Japan, we can't overtake on these resurfaced tracks because the tyres are too hard and there's no deg and you essentially are just in a big train.
Yeah.
And they tested this thing in Imola, bringing the newer tyre, the softer tyre. I think it worked relatively well in that it created some excitement, as you said. It's nice to see them actually responding to the drivers. And one thing that does concern or is a point for concern is that we're losing a lot of these driver favored tracks. For example, Spa.
Yeah.
For example,
well, Imola's not been renewed.
Imola looks to be on a chopping block as well.
Although I've heard that it might be back for 1 year while Madrid is delayed again. Why we're not getting Barcelona back as well, I don't know.
No, but when you look at a track like Monaco, of course, as we've spoken about heavily now, the ultimate driver's track and calls for its removal are ever present. If they are going to start favouring these artificial street tracks, at what point does it look like it might move on, which would be a shame?
Yeah, it would be. I don't have an answer for that, but I think it's a shame that we have Spa in rotation. We won't have Imola on the calendar. Yeah, okay, we've got 2 races in Italy, but how long before they get rid of Monza? Because it doesn't produce great overtaking, perhaps. And then suddenly we've lost a lot of heritage circuits. And yeah, I think that would kill off a lot of old school Formula One fans' interest in the sport.
Yeah. I don't think anyone looks at the calendar and goes, wow, Saudi is my favorite race.
No. Well,
it's not a bad race, but no one's going to look at it and go, wow. Whereas you take Silverstone, I don't think they'll ever get rid of Silverstone, but
I don't think they legally can.
But you look at these older tracks. I mean, some of the epic moments we've had in Monza, as you've spoken about. Yeah. Imola's had its time. Spa's had some great races.
Phenomenal races.
Charles Leclerc's first wins in Spa.
Well, even 2023, when at the ultimate dominance of Max Verstappen, the guy came from like 15th on the grid and won the race. And I know not everybody's a Max Verstappen fan, but that's kind of cool.
That was epic. Yeah.
It's a spectacle.
Feat.
It's entertainment.
Yeah.
Whether you're a fan or not. And we have, the drama between Fernando and Lewis where Lewis is like this on top of Fernando's car.
So it's interesting. It will forever be there will forever be a conversation around Monaco in this modern age about its validity. But for as long as it is here, I will love it.
Yep.
Saturday in Monaco will forever be my favorite bit of any season.
That and Friday morning. Friday morning. Well, actually, it used to be Thursday morning, but it is now Friday morning. Free practice 1, first 10 minutes.
Just chaos, absolute chaos. It's an awesome race, and there's so much behind it that it always feels so special.
Yeah, agreed.
So, fingers crossed. Another one that we will talk of or think of favorably.
Are we owed a wet one soon? Or was last year
the
wet?
last really wet one I remember was Alonso in 22.
Yeah.
Where he almost had his return to the top step.
Yeah, I can't remember if last year was wet, but
I don't think it was, because there were those amazing videos of Charles driving around, and it's all.
Oh, we had
nice.
that incident at the start between Perez and the Haas cars that brought out the red flag.
Yeah, that they cleaned up in about 5 minutes.
Everybody changed their tyres in that red flag, and then they just ran hard to the end. Yes, but it was dry. But then the year 2023 was wet because we had Fernando.
That was 22.
No.
Yes, 23. Sorry.
22 had Vettel,
21
Aston.
Yeah. 21 was Lewis, the big Lewis drama. 22 was the Charles Max year, and then 23 was the Aston rebirth.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 23.
So 23. So we maybe owed a wet one soon.
Oh, maybe. And I think it is meant to be a bit wet.
It's rumored to be wet.
So maybe another classic. Fingers crossed.
Okay, so we're going to leave this one there. We've spoken for just a little over an hour. So as predicted in episode 4, these specials are not going to be shorter than a regular podcast. And Tim just likes giving me more work to do in the editing suite by making me laugh and cough and sneeze in between. And
I'm really good at making you especially sneeze.
Sneeze, yeah. So the next thing you will hear from us after this will be episode 5, which we are recording early next week to publish at the end of the week. But you already know that if you've heard episode 5, so that's okay. That we will focus on the British Grand Prix, MotoGP, and the Monaco Grand Prix and Imola.
Yeah, we'll cover Imola too.
Then we will do an Indy 500 special because we will have had the Indy 500 this weekend. Tim and I know probably less than nothing about IndyCar racing because it's not a series we've ever really been into. So we're hoping that will open our horizons as much as it'll open yours.
Definitely.
And then we will do the build up to Le Mans. And you can find all of that information at headattheapex.com.
Good website plug.
Thank you. And yes, please share this with your friends. We are getting lots of listens. It's growing is a way to describe that. And that makes us feel really good. Not that we do this to feel good, but it's a nice bonus.
As enthusiasm.
Please continue to share. Please follow us on Instagram and
definitely follow us on Instagram.
Hope you enjoy the Monaco Grand Prix as much as we will enjoy Monaco Grand Prix qualifying.
Yes, definitely. See you in a bit.
Bye.
Peace.